We welcome members of the public who are watching this today. I do have an apology from our chair, Bruce Robinson. I have an apology from Councillor Dunn. I have an apology from Councillor Akuata Brown, even though she's not part of the committee, just letting us know she won't attend today. Moved by Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by myself, all in favour, contrary carried. So let's talk about declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Nothing that anyone can see today. So we move on to our minutes, and Bruce had a few comments about the open minutes. So what I'm going to do as we go through each paper, Bruce sent through notes that just came through to me this morning, so I haven't properly read them. I have given them the quick once over, so I'll share that with you as we go. So Bruce said the following are a combination of questions for the audit and risk papers that circulated to me and some matters to be discussed. Again, the committee papers are very clear and crisp. Well done to the team. I sent these as an aid memoirs to you, and you're welcome to share them with the committee. Open minutes. Bruce said the minutes are fine, but I note that we discussed the external audit with our auditors. I wonder if there is any update on whether our original audit timetable for the annual report is being maintained by both us and EY. The Auditor General has got extended completion times through Parliament, with new statutory timelines for LG moved out to 31st December and an extension by 1 month for CCOs. So far, for my other responsibilities, the audit team are confirming our planned date without making use of the extension, either because we are unable to maintain the timeline or because the Auditor General has determined other audits have higher priority for completion. You want to comment, Pauline? I should note that this our CEO is at an emergency civil defence meeting, so she is an apology as well. You happy to add that? Thank you. Pauline.
Through Chair, just to add, up until last night's announcements with the moving COVID alerts, our EY, our external auditors, were still going to the original timelines. And that was expected to at least have the adoption by the end of September. But I've sent out an email to them today just to say, in light of this, will this have any impacts on the delivery of it? But if that is, I'll confirm that. But at the moment, we are still and have been always working to those original timelines.
Thank you for that. Any questions from the floor? Yes. Minutes. Councillor Seymour.
Thank you. I'll just note, and I was referred to further through, this is page 7 of 104. The payment of the first claims, and these are claims I understand to government for the support that was provided, and its third bullet point, that claim has not yet been received. And further through the documentation, it again refers back in the agenda, which I'll come to later, about claims. So I wanted to know how many claims there were and what is the status of the claims now? Because I think GDC and the ratepayers would seem to be paying and not be reimbursed for things that would have been normally reimbursed. I think you've said in the report that CDM have funded things, but the other DSW type or social welfare type claims have not been funded. Have they been funded now?
Through Chair, not yet. So there was 2 claims. We put in the bulk of it, which was just under $1 million, and then there was a subsequent wash up, which was only probably in the last 4 weeks as things were coming in. In terms of that, what happens, we give it to NEMO. They actually look at all the criteria with it, and they have to assess it. And they're still to go through that full process. Once they're happy with that, they then say you can issue an invoice, and then it goes through the process with it. So there has their times to get through. I think they have had delay, but correspondingly we've had saying when is it and when is the likely impacts that we will receive it.
And also I understand around claims, because this is what audit and risk is about, that there was an outstanding claim to TDH for the use of the War Memorial Theatre, and that should have been funded, and that might not have been reimbursed either.
It's understand it's not part of a claimable cost. If we are operating a sedum and it's part of our rental councils, we can't claim from that. So that's just part of the setting up the original ones. There was a original thought that we may be able to charge that on, but it's our cost, and that's not part of the claimable.
No, sorry, supplementary, Madam Chair, I don't mean for the CDM function, I mean for the public testing function, which I understand.
For the CBAC that we had in the War Memorial Theatre.
Yes, and that was funded, I understand, to district health boards to arrange, and this council made the front room of the War Memorial Theatre available, and that is an outstanding claim.
I'll find out and come back to you.
Thank you. We can just follow that up. Thank you for that, Councillor Seymour.
Because at the end of the day, the ratepayers are paying for all of these things that should be reimbursed to this council. And frankly, if that's more than $1 million, that's $1 million of other work that council's not doing, because we rated people for it last year. So thank you. We do need to follow it up.
Thank you for that. Do I have a mover for our minutes? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Cranston. If there are no more questions, I put it to the floor. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you. So then we move on to our action sheet, which is relatively small. There are 2 actions on there. So both are, the one is passed on to the CEO to sign, and the other one is our governance plan, which is just on the next page.
Madam Chair, can we put the follow-up of reimbursements onto the action sheet so we can keep a close eye on it, please?
Coral, can we please add that? Thank you. Thanks for that. So if you take a look on page 13 of 104, that is our work plan for the rest of this year. So today you see we've got quite a few, but mostly noting papers today. And then we've got a September and a November meeting. Everyone happy with that time frame?
Sorry, just through the chair, you'll note on the work program in the public excluded section, there are 2 discussion items which are deferred to the next meeting. Sorry, obviously with announcement overnight, the CE's busy, and as is.
So some of our public excluded discussions will move to our next meeting.
Thank you.
So I take you to page 14, which is our first paper today, which is our internal audit update. And that give us, and that's where Councillor Seymour's questions are also featured on page 15, the welfare packs, and the it would be very good for us to ask the timeline of those payments, because at the end of the day, it's put here out of our council.
And it needs, could we have the actual sums too, Your Worship, so that we can actually appropriately track it? Because this is where I read further to the question in front.
Number 4
and 5 and 6.
And if the situation change what we're in now, and we might move into levels again where this is activated, this will be an ongoing issue. So it's good for us to get those timelines of when payments will happen, because we also need to know what money we are dealing with. We can't, so thank you for that. In order for us also to know if it happens again, or if we move into different levels again in the next few weeks, that we know when those payments will be due. Thank you. Any questions around this? Is just, as you will note today, we've got noting papers. It's mostly an update. I just want to see if Bruce had any. Oh, and Bruce just said we are now reacting to a second wave possible of COVID. This item naturally leads to a discussion. Are we ready for COVID-19.2? Shall it affect the region more than level 2? What lessons have we learned? And I am confident. I was part of our civil defence team throughout the 2 months that we ran this operation, and we learned a lot. I'm sure we are ready. Our teams today are standing up again, and they will be taking a look at what we need to do to be ready, and also learn from what we did last time, which was a first go. So I'm sure we will be prepared, and Team Tairāwhiti will do it again. So I will move this internal audit update. Do I have and Councillor Cranston, any questions? Oh, you've got a question at Councillor Cranston, please.
I'm not sure there's anyone in the room that can answer it, but item 9 on page 15, I was just really wanting an update on the redeployment, how well it's going.
So I can give you a relative quick update. There is some in the agenda tomorrow in the CE's report, which is more thorough, but it is cracking. The numbers, I think it's already 160 people in different programs. There's some kaitiaki programs around titirangi. There are some hazardous tree removal. So the numbers are in the CEO's report for tomorrow, so we can cover that off. But it's going really well. We have had 2 variations to that contract. When we originally signed it, it was only to redeploy forestry workers that were out of work. But then when we went into level 3, all forestry workers went back to work, and we saw other industries affected. So we applied for a variation to that contract, which meant that we could use other workers as well. All workers come through MSD, so it's a close relationship with MSD. What we did find though, and that's why we had to apply for another variation, was to stretch it out till December, is that when some of the programs that we put forward, you really needed to be skilled with your chainsaw, and that was where forestry workers came in. But then when the forestry workers went back to work, we realized we do have a group of workers, but they might not have those skills yet. So, but it's going really well, and you'll see the numbers in the CEO report tomorrow.
What are we going to see?
There are heaps, there are 2 success stories, and there are heaps already, and yes, you will see outcomes. There are lots happening. Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to support Councillor Seymour's point in regards to our reimbursement, which is a valid point just in general, but now since the announcement last night, it's even more so because if we have to organise ourselves to escalate up the levels again, we'll be wanting to do it in last time urgency was the thing, right? That urgency and to get it done really, really quickly was the focus. We've been there before, so I'm thinking that there's going to be ways where we do it more effectively and more efficiently in terms of spending. It would be good to have had those conversations, particularly in regards to the CBAC between here and the health board, because it may turn out that War Memorial might not be the spot in terms of being able to what we can afford, because we don't know what support packages will be coming out of central government, so we need to start kind of strategizing for our own region and act like maybe it might just be on us. You're right, we've been here before, and I think if we were to go back into this again, I think we would smash it out of the park like we did the last time. But I think if we were, it would be slightly different in regards to, I think, support coming out of central government. So having those costs and knowing what they are between here and our health board would be very, very helpful for both organisations to make accurate decisions.
Because as the Civil Defence will stand up again today, just in precaution, we don't know what will be announced Friday or next week. We have those meetings every morning and every afternoon, like we had in level 4, 3 and 2, between health, police, all those people that are part of Civil Defence. So that is also something that I'll take to that, Hui. Thank you for that. Councillor Foster.
Just a query actually, because last time we went straight into level 4 and we went down from 4, 3 to 2 and 1. This time we've done the reverse. So does that mean that does that change anything?
So Councillor Foster, last time we were in level 2 for 2 weeks, then we were in level 3 for 2 days, and then we were in lockdown for 5 weeks. So we did step it up. And this time we were in level 1 and now we're in level 2. Auckland jumped straight to level 3. But the principles stay exactly the same of what to do and what not to do. So at this stage, all we can control is hand washing, social distancing, track where you're going. And if you're sick, the most important, if you're sick, stay home.
Thank you.
Councillor Cranston.
In support of what Councillor Whare was saying, there was concern at the health board with the amount that we were charging for the theatre for that facility. So I think we do need to really consider that pricing.
I have not heard that before. I will
Yeah,
take
no,
that
it
with
was
me.
a big figure, wasn't it? Yeah, it was over 40,000. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it was quite big, and at the time when I saw it, I thought, possibly we could have negotiated that price a bit better.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll take that with me. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All in favour? Contrary carried. Thank you for that. We now move to something that we as a team already discussed, and I know Bruce, Charlotte, thank you for joining us. So this, remember we discussed this at Sustainable Tairāwhiti when we talk about our significant forecasting assumptions. And Bruce, I'm just going to read Bruce's comments before we finish. So Bruce said, page 19, this is a confidence-inducing paper reflecting a very thorough approach to our long-term planning. It is difficult not to raise, but equally difficult to estimate how water reform is going to affect our long-term planning, especially if the government's planned reform timelines of 2023 is in some way going to be maintained. There is a general risk identification on this affecting our plans. Given the recent round of reform seminars, I think it would be good to consider this further with more information we have now and how it will affect our planning. So that's just a few chats from him. And then later in the paper, on page 25, he said one key risk is dependency on key staff. So page 25. This is very real and unavoidable. As a mitigation, a number of my responsibilities have been ensuring key staff get some period of leave right at the moment before the pressure comes on. So that was just a risk that Bruce raised on page 25. Charlotte, do you want to have a quick korero with us around this? We did give it a good thrashing. This was, yeah, you go.
If I may, I might just focus on two specific points, and Bruce raised the water reform and as part of his feedback. So as noted in the paper, we did talk about the assumptions and that we would need to do some further updates and check-in points along the process due to some of the high levels of uncertainty with related to some of the assumptions, particularly some of the legislative changes that are kind of just starting to come out in more detail, but also around obviously COVID-19, which is quite topical today, obviously. So with the water reform, the intention with that one is to, for that particular assumption, to do some more work around the full impact of the reforms and the specific impacts it will have on council in the area and update the assumption to reflect that. In terms of COVID-19, just a brief update on that. Naturally, we'll be re-looking at the two specific project risks that mentioned that are in the paper. And one is around particularly community engagement, which naturally pre-engagement period is scheduled for September, which is next month. So looking at how there might be some impacts on that with the current updates with COVID-19. And potentially cycling back up the alert levels as well. And also in the report, you'll note there's some particular assumptions around COVID-19 and the impacts and how this will reflect back through our LTP. So the information in those particular assumptions are based on the Infometrics report that was done in May, based on obviously the first level 4 alert that we went through back in March and through to April. And this was an area that we had planned to do a little update on for September for the next councillor workshop. And obviously that's also quite timely given the current situation as well. So there'll be further update around that and some more work done in that area and be reported back to the committee at the November meeting as noted on the governance work plan. So those are the kind of the key points I wanted to highlight.
Thank you.
In terms of changes.
I don't expect heaps of questions from the floor because we gave this a good thrashing at our Sustainable Tairāwhiti, but the floor is open for any questions. Councillor Seymour.
It's just a point of concern more than a question, Madam Chair, and it relates to paragraph 9. talks about the COVID-19 impact, and then talks a lot about the response and recovery plan. And I hate to say it, but I've been around this table long enough to know that these plans get written and sometimes not much comes out the other end. I would like to think that we were going to take that document seriously, but I do think we need to spend more time on it. It says some things are council responsibility and some are our partners' responsibility, but it's just a document at the minute, and we've seen them put on the shelf and barely anything come out of them. So if we're serious about that recovery document, I'd excuse me, either in a council situation or at the September meeting of this committee, some real work be done so we actually understand which of the projects in there directly attributed to council is council going to make happen. Otherwise, it's just another document like the action plan and then like the reconfigured action plan, and now we've got the third iteration. Because in fact, that's all it is. It's the third iteration of the action plans for Taurapiti. And I think we need to own it, and we need to own our responsibility in it, but spend some time so we know what it means and what kind of dollars need to be set beside the particular projects that we're responsible for. Because otherwise nothing happens. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that. And can we please do that? Can we come to our next meeting, or alternatively have, I know there's some mention in the CEO report about it tomorrow, so we might include it there, but have councillor, we don't need a workshop, but a proper update on what our responsibilities are, how it is affecting our own work plans. Because I think at this stage, it's mainly housing, where we're doing some housing. Mr. James Beattie, please.
Sorry, just through the chair, and I completely understand where Councillor Seymour's coming from. I just wanted to note that obviously with last night's announcement, we're in a pivot situation again, which turns our mind back to quite a dramatic response phase. And so we've been on this recovery journey for 102 days, etc. And I just wanted to make that note that, you know, the announcements that we anticipate on Friday night actually put our frame of mind and our priorities back to, you know, quite a response. So I just wanted to make sure there was some understanding about that. Again, we're in very uncertain times, and last night's announcement was testament to that fact.
Absolutely. Supplementary, we absolutely understand that, but you know, on Friday it'll either be one way or the other way. And I just think that we'll get away with a document just being a well-written document that we all are really proud of. And frankly, it doesn't change the dial one iota. So if we are in a positive situation and can move forward, I want to see the dollars laid beside, because how council officers can put it into the 10-year plan if we don't understand what we're thinking to spend on it, is just, we're just not fulfilling our role.
Yep, I agree with you, and we will see how things change and play accordingly, but take note of that and make sure we do focus on that. Thank you for that, Councillor Seymour. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah. Just adding to that, I mean, you know, you just mentioned it, the priorities is housing for the future. I mean, and I see in this report, you know, this is my pet, population growth. I'm on 46. We're at 28 levels, 49,300. That's what we are now. And we've got, and in the report as well, it says about rural decline. You try and buy a property in Tokomaru at the moment. You can't get, there's nothing. There's a high demand. There's an increase of people going into the rural areas, not a decline. And also on 86 with economic impacts of COVID-19 here, the drop in population. Hey, you know, there's a lot of work in this region. There's not much work in Auckland. The regions are going to be a place, a good destination for people who haven't got work in Auckland to come to, especially here. And you know, if we don't take this seriously and really get our ducks lined up with our property, I mean, we've got GHL with their property in St Mary's, an example. We could be helping them with infrastructure to get that up and running faster. We could be doing the other project over in back at Sponge Bay. We need to put priority on all these urgently, because these figures in here, they're not true. You know, we've got a population growth that we've never seen before, and we need to be catering for it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Foster, and that ties into what Councillor Seymour said earlier, because one of the main outcomes of the Rautipura Ora recovery, the one thing that affects every organisation that is part of health iwi organisations, everyone, Manaaki Tairawhiti Council, every organisation that was part of that is housing. So it is those two tie in together. We need to do that groundwork in order to, and that's where we come in. What do we need to do in order to enable that development or actively encourage or do something? You raised it at a previous meeting as well. I can't remember, was it Sustainable Tairawhiti? Thank you for that. It's a very valid comment. Okay, do I have a mover for this? Councillor Cranston.
When you get a report like this with lots of tables and graphs and that, not all of them absolutely relate to council, and this one doesn't, but it really did make me curious. On page 48 under school leavers with NCA level 2 or above, it states that in 2018, 51.9% of people were absent from school. No, the other way around, 40.9 were absent from school, but in the last year, 2019, 51.9. Now that's an incredible difference. Page 48, paragraph under the table for central school leavers with NCA level 2 or above. I'll read it, it might be easier. Research has shown that sustained absence from school affects educational achievements and can be led to significantly diminished opportunities later in life. School attendance is particularly low in Gisborne district in comparison to the rest of New Zealand. In 2019, only 40.9% of children attended school in Gisborne, a significant drop from 2018, just 1 year, which was 51.9%. Now that's an incredible, that's 200 plus children.
They have to, Madam Chair, the point of that, because I've done some work on that, is that that's attending 90% of school. Yeah. But it is poor, but there's been $2 million made available to the schools in Gisborne to get some truancy, but some more social work encouragement projects going to get kids back into school. I mean, I was for, because we've had this report already, haven't we? It's sustainable or somewhere. And so investigating it, but it still is a terrible stat.
As a 1 year stat.
Because I raised it yesterday, I was up the coast yesterday with Campbell Dews, who's the headmaster in Hicks Bay, and I said, Campbell, do you guys have the, because I remember roughly 40%, and he said, well, we're a relative close community, so he'll just drive over and go in, but it is a problem. It is a problem. Mr. Foster.
The other one related to that is the NEAT table, which is page 59, and that's something that has come up before, and it states in the dialogue that the stats are combined with Hawke's Bay, but then in the table it identifies it as the Gisborne region, so I wasn't sure how to read that table, whether it was the Gisborne region or it was actually the Hawke's Bay Gisborne region, and if it is the Hawke's Bay Gisborne region, then it's not actually telling us too much.
Can we check that? Charlotte, thank you. Any more questions around this paper? Well, if not, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by myself. If there are no more questions, and I said we've given this a good thrashing at Sustainable Tairawhiti. All in favour? Contrary, carried. And I do want to welcome Councillor Faulkner here today. She's not part of our committee, but it's lovely to see you here and you join us, and feel free to ask questions if you want to. So now we move into our last paper, which is about health and safety, and Mr. Beatty will talk to us about that. Dave, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. I've got Dave here today, our report writer, and he's just going to give us some of the highlights from the report, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks very much. Good to see you all. First time here, but thanks for listening. So yeah, in the report, I think the key thing is it's good to see the audit and risk coming to your agenda in future, so you can fulfil your duties under due diligence, section 44 of the Health and Safety Work Act 2015. It's just so that you understand the risks that we come across. Bruce included in his email, looked at last time, some key things that I actually fully support in relation to supporting people and our staff at this time in the well-being, because there's quite a lot of pressure going for us. And also contractor management is a key one for us. contractors do a lot of our high-risk work, and therefore we need to manage those and follow up to ensure they're doing everything safely. That's a key one to us. In fact, I was going to Bay of Plenty local group on Friday. That looks like it might be canned now, but one focus was on contractor management. I think all councils see the same issues and same risk. So that's the key thing to us is contractor management, health and well-being of our staff at these times, and due diligence by yourselves. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was the concern that sort of came through the paper, that, and I did want to address that, because is there a clear line of responsibility, like when it does turn to custody? Is there a clear line that, hey, council's in the can for this, or the contractor, or the subcontractor? How is that determined?
Right. Under the Health and Safety Work Act, and previously working for the government regulator, everybody has a duty in relation to the work. It's the ability to influence the situation. So, for instance, we engage a contractor with the competence to do their work. A lot of the expectations of health and safety are on that contractor. However, we have to manage those contractors, and that includes regular catch-ups, regular meetings, and monitoring and reviewing their work, which is actually what we do. We're out on the ground, watching what they do, auditing them, but essentially leaving them to do the competencies that they're actually engaged to do. So it's a joint collaborative work in relation to doing the job safely.
And this is liability insurance, ensuring it's all in place. And
that's right, is making sure we do due diligence and we actually follow up. We do engage contractors under the SHE approval process as well. So we've got good, robust procedures to ensure they have good health and safety processes in place before they work for the council. Then we monitor their performance and regularly meet up to ensure they are doing exactly what they say, as far as reasonably practical, because we are relying on behavioural, sometimes people and behaviours.
So I've got Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Paul.
Yeah, just to further expand on what Councillor Krantz was talking about around contractor management, isn't it true that the ultimate duty of care lies at this table and inside this organisation? Like, I hear you that contractors have their own processes that they need to go through in order to be able to maintain health and safety standards, and that you as staff need to be monitoring those, but we also at that table need to be ensured that we're monitoring the monitoring of those, right? But because this was the problem with Pike, that people at every level didn't take responsibility, and they said, well, I followed my processes, and then the people monitoring those processes said, well, we monitor those. And the CE said, well, I told the staff to monitor those, and the board, like, I told the CE to monitor the monitoring, you know. So I thought that, yeah, so basically my question is, doesn't the ultimate duty actually sit at this table?
I don't think the ultimate duty sits at this table. I think there is a duty at this table, and that duty is due diligence, to actually be aware of the risks and of the fact that they are being well managed and monitored by the team under them. The ability to influence comes more directly at the contractor's side. They are on site, they're actually doing the work, and they have processes in place to do that safely. GDC monitor those contractors, and at the same time, you guys will review what we're actually doing at that sub-level. So I think everybody's got a duty, but I don't think it necessarily stays at this level of the main responsibility.
Supplementary, do you think that the mechanisms we have at this table to monitor what our health and safety obligations are sufficient?
That's a very good question, and part of your duties are to ensure that the resource is acceptable. At the moment, we've got a small team, yeah, I think we do a good job. I think we could do better. There is a lot of contractors working throughout Gisborne region, Tarapiti region. It's difficult sometimes to actually get to everywhere, so we have to have those regular meetings and review accidents, incidents, and statistics to ensure that they've actually been doing a good job. But we do get out, and I do feel we're resourced enough and adequately enough to do the job well.
I think assisting us with that as well is like the pre-qualification system. You know, that's one of our first lines of defence before we even engage a contractor. You know, they've got to survive that process in order for them to be able to do work with us. So there's layers, I think, to the assurance that we can provide in terms of our whole health and safety environment, you know, and getting out amongst the team and making sure that people are not just got things written on paper, that they're actually putting those things into practice. One of the things I'm really proud about in this organisation is that health and safety matters, and our health and safety culture is something that we live and breathe every day. It's on our agenda, it's talked about all the time. There's very few meetings, certainly in the senior leadership environment, that doesn't have it as a standard agenda item. You'll see, and you'll recall from the last time that we put a paper, which was an inaugural paper, coming to this committee, that we said, you know, we've got, this is the report as it stands, and it will evolve and make sure that we're covering those due diligence components for council. And I just wanted to highlight, so in addition to the fact that we're taking the report from this committee through to councils to ensure that we've got total visibility from all elected members, because this committee is not a committee of the whole. So that's one of those aspects as well. Section 21 of this report. So councillors are also required to acquire and keep up to date your knowledge of health and safety. So we will continue to put in, and thankfully WorkSafe does a brilliant job of making sure the nation is kept up to date with key pieces of whether it's common law or legislative change. So we'll make sure those things go in there. There are some things that come out that I don't see a direct connect to this table or the work that we do. So we're looking at those things on a case-by-case basis, ensuring that the things that are relevant in terms of your knowledge are coming to this table as well. So I encourage councillors to you know, notice those things in these reports in terms of any learnings or understandings and how they might impact on our work. We certainly look at those things, and they might even prompt a review, you know. So we've had things like, you know, the horrible Christchurch event around the shooting that, you know, said, well, actually, let's really have a look at that for us. And so we conducted a review to make sure that we've got all those processes and assurance around that stuff. You know, the whole COVID experience is having us take a look at our systems and processes as well, and that'll continue.
I'd also like to add accident investigations for contractors. We take that very seriously, and we will actually get a full investigation report from the contractors, review that to see if there's any learnings throughout Gisborne District Council as well. So we do take that seriously. We do thorough investigations.
I have Councillor Faulkner.
My only other question is, and it tends to fall through the gaps in large organisations, is your consultancy team, because they're not strictly speaking staff, and equally they're not strictly speaking fluoro-wearing high-risk contractors. So where do we sit with our consultancy team across the organisation, our requirements of them, and equally their answerability to us? Thank you.
So are you talking not the, well, they're all contractors of a sort, but are you talking more like as opposed to someone who might be doing, you know, a safety sensitive role on our behalf versus someone who might be doing some more research, strategy, development planning? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for example, the architects teams, yeah. The environmental teams that are out working on our behalf. But, yeah, that's right. So they don't, as I say, they're not necessarily GDC staff, and equally they're not in high risk contract roles, roading, forestry, etc.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So I don't know that we make all consultants go through the SHE pre-qualification. It's more associated with the nature of the work. So I remember there was the piano tuner case. Did anyone ever hear about that? There was, yeah, so there was a big question around whether, you know, someone in a role like that who ordinarily wouldn't come a cropper should be getting, you know, a pre-qualification. We, as everyone who works for us, is required to abide by our health and safety policies and obligations. So we'll certainly do that at a contractual level. So our contracts will ensure that they are observing good health and safety practices for the nature of the work that they're doing. I don't think we've had like any sort of accident investigations or anything like that I'm aware of. Dave, you might be able to comment.
Nor myself, no, but you're right. They go through a full induction process. We're treated like an employee, and they're expected to follow all the health and safety legislation and rules. but it's good to raise.
Yeah, I think probably where I'm coming from is that it's about health and safety.
Yeah.
We're a bit inclined to focus purely on the safety.
On the safety.
And in that consultancy space, you're probably looking more at health. To be fair. Thank you.
So I have a question. The day before yesterday, I started a travel all around the coast. I had meetings in Uawa, Ruatoria, Hicks Bay, then I went up to Maraenui where the Eugenie Sage gave us the $34 million for the Rokumara and came all back yesterday. But when I went to Hicks Bay 2 days ago, I had a few people that I met up with, but I also nosed around places where I know, like the Wharf Road or the Karakatufero River works. Anyway, as I was driving towards the wharf in Hicks Bay, I had my husband on the speakerphone, so we were chatting while I'm driving. And as I enter into that road just next to the well, if everyone been to the Hicks Bay Wharf, I said to my husband, you better stay on the line because I can't turn back now. All I'm seeing in front of me are these massive big holes filled with water. Luckily, I'm in a four-wheel drive. And I carried through there and I was thinking, this is exactly where our risks sit. Because when I did go through all the big holes, and the only reason I kept going, if I couldn't turn back anyway, was I saw a camper van at the front. So I knew someone had to get there. But that road is a risk to our community. When I turned around and came back, there were on the left some dropouts. And as I was exiting and driving away, going over the bridge, a tiny little European Audi came wanting to go where I have just gone. And it crossed my mind then, that is a risk to people. We do have some signs saying, you know, there are some potholes, but those are the things that concern me as the mayor, where there are not a lot of eyes in certain places because there's a small community or not a lot of people travel that road to warrant, or not warrant us, but there's that risk. And that could have been a massive risk if something happened there. And that's what I thought I would ask today at this meeting. How do we make sure that in those areas around our coast, I'm just talking about the coast now, we have those risks under control? Because a contractor might have been putting out some signs or filling a few potholes, but it is a real risk. And I was just wondering how we deal with that.
For our staff or for the members of the community?
Both.
Both. So the members of staff, you'll see from the graph, vehicle incidents and accidents is one of the top ones. So we've actually prioritized that as a high risk. We've identified as high risk, and we've actually got some really good systems in for lone remote working and e-roads in the cars to ensure the safety of our workers. Driving around the coast as well, I've come across a lot of roads that I felt were unsafe myself, and thinking not just of GDC workers, but the community.
Yes, it's about the community that live there every day.
That's right. I've seen several RFSs that come through to actually saying poor condition of roads. When it mentions health and safety, I get included. When it doesn't mention health and safety, I don't. So I think there's an opportunity for improvement in there. But that will go to our journeys team, and they will prioritise based on the amount of finance.
So can I then supplementary ask if the Wharf Road in Hicks Bay is on your health and safety list?
It's not on my list, but I will check with journeys to find out.
Thanks a lot for that. Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, you're just highlighting matters that have been raised before. If you look at the road, Waikawa Road, out of Waipiro Bay, people live there. That is their home. And I have raised that so many times. It's been raised again quite recently because they firmly of the view that the metal that came down the Waipiro, the stream, could have been, the Waikawa stream, could have been used to metal the end of their road. We expect those people to use a beach, which is just not acceptable. And we've put some work into it. At the minute it's accessible in four-wheel drive, but only because one of the long-term residents got out there and put some stones in the holes himself. You know, there are 2 or 3 places, it won't be many, but there are a few places where we have to lift the standard of care that we provide to our residents. And I can't tell you how many times I've RFS'd that road. And you know what I'm talking about because you lost your shoe in the mud when we went for a visit.
That is so true. I had to chuck that pair of shoes. I could not revive them.
Yes. Actually, it's only Gumbert territory anyway, but it was on our coast trip. And if they were to take us there in the next couple of weeks, which I suspect now
Yeah.
It won't be any different. So work was done in the summer, and I acknowledge that, and it's very good when it's dry, but that area gets a huge amount of rain, and it's just not appropriate for people to be expected to use a beach in the 21st century. I feel really strongly about it.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
Just on page 101, notifiable events. We've had 2 in the last year, and yet underneath we've had surgery on 9 occasions from different injuries. My question is, what triggers and what level are the 2 occasions that do get notified to WorkSafe? Why can't we actually identify what they are? And what level of injury triggers that? Obviously, it must be, if there's 9 surgeries that have been happening from different events and they weren't notified, or maybe the 2 are part of that, I'm not quite sure, but it would be good to know what those, what the threshold is for notifiable injuries to WorkSafe.
Great. Do I need this? Yeah, so there's quite clear directions for notifiable events on the WorkSafe website. Generally, they're quite high level, so where you do need to stay overnight in a hospital, that will be a notifiable event. Or a notifiable instance, something that could have created or caused somebody to have serious harm, is also a notifiable event. So there's clear criteria required for notifiable events. 2's pretty good over a year. Bear in mind, the one which could have been avoided was a gentleman falling over with a knife in his hand and severed a tendon. Been using the knife for about 7 years. So, it should have been using a craft knife that was retractable, but we weren't aware of that. The other one was a fall for a possum, a shooter, fell and landed on a twig, a stick, on his knee, which caused some quite serious damage. Totally unavoidable in that situation, but a notifiable event all the same. I couldn't understand the 9 surgeries though, but we could talk.
Just under here, there's
What page?
on page 101, under the notifiable events, you've got cut finger tendon damage requiring surgery 7 out of 19.
Sorry, that's the date. It's July 7/19. Yep.
July 2000.
July 19. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's
But
fine.
thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, well.
Anywho, do I have any more questions of Dave or James in regards to this paper? Hey, thanks a lot for that.
No, thank you.
We are responsible for our community, and more so even for our communities that live far away from here, that don't have the access that we have. I just want us to make sure we keep that front of mind as well, because it's